My name is Claire McFadden and I'm from Brisbane, Australia. Yeah, sure. Well, we start school at about 5 or 6, so you go into prep, then through to grade 1 and up to grade 12. The systems, there's state schools, which I guess are in some ways correlated to the public school system here. There's private schools as well, but from my understanding of the American system, I think private schools aren't as private as they are in the US context. So there's a lot of Catholic schools in Australia and other independent schools that a lot of children will go to for not a huge amount of money, a huge cost. Okay, so we have primary school, which is from prep to grade 7, and this kind of varies a little bit across states too, but in general you're there from around 5 to 12 years old, and then high school is 13 to 17. Sometimes people go right through at the same school, but there's usually a split. I just think essentially social skills and just learning how to cope with horrible people. Like, I think, really, I do. I mean, I think, you know, you could say I could be all, you know, emotional and say it's about learning to learn, which I do think it should be as well. But I think the main lesson I learnt from school was resilience, particularly primary school, and coping with unpleasant people. And I think that's why I would be strongly against homeschooling, because I don't think you get that opportunity. Look, I think a lot of people would talk about learning to learn, and I think also, particularly at some of the private schools, they talk about more pastoral care kinds of goals, like becoming, you know, a good person, becoming a good citizen, contributing to the community, that kind of thing. I think a huge challenge in Australia is teachers being completely undervalued, completely underpaid, and completely overstretched. So I guess it in some ways parallels the American, or I should say the US context, where teachers are expected to do more and more, and particularly with things like community and family breakdown, sometimes a teacher is the only stable adult in a child's life. So there's a huge amount of responsibility expected of these teachers, which they can't possibly meet all the time. So I think that's the biggest issue. I guess another issue is the over bureaucratisation of schools, where we have this huge administrative system that teachers have to cope with now, which they didn't in the past. I think all these things that are taking teachers away from actually teaching children. So I think they would be the key things. Also, like a huge focus on meeting curriculum standards, you know, which is pushing the things like arts in some ways off the agenda. Although that's kind of not as dire as it is potentially here. Yeah, there is. So there's a new national curriculum which is just being implemented at the moment. So the idea is that rather than each state being responsible for a curriculum, it will be across the board, and things like the arts are being addressed. I guess, you know, there's just been an interesting report on education published in Australia called the Gonski Report, which maybe we could link to on this website or something. But that's been led by the federal government. I think an interesting thing about education in Australia is it's maybe because it's a smaller country, it can be more cared for in a way than perhaps it is here. I don't think we have kind of the diabolical system in public schools that people talk about here. I'm not suggesting I'm not like saying it's diabolical. Hey, we're filming. I'm just saying that that's teachers in Australia, and certainly parents, don't talk about schooling with the same kind of level of frustration that they do here. And I think maybe that's because it is a smaller country, and those kind of things can be maintained. And I guess there's a lot more funding put into those kind of things too. So.